Murals Talk, and a look at Because We Care Foundation. All that and more coming up now on Joy in the City, True Stories. Joy in the City is a program highlighting people and organizations having an impact in our city. All too often, we hear about the problems and dysfunction in our culture, but we are coming with a different approach as we take a look at the good things going on right here in our community. I'm Lindsay Irvin, and you're about to see what God is doing in our city. We want to thank our program sponsors, Park Home, for the donation of furniture used in our studio, Made by Vogel for the contribution of many props in our studio, and our platinum sponsor, Harry's Construction, for their ongoing support of Joy in the City. Murals Talk is a community and youth-driven initiative using mural construction to bridge cultural, economic, and social gaps. We had the privilege to sit down and talk with Pamela Snyder E about the work she is doing.
Hi Pam, thanks for being here today. I want you to start by explaining to our viewers what exactly is Murals Talk.
Sure. So thank you for having me, first of all.
Absolutely.
And Murals Talk is a nonprofit arts organization that is through the Central Pennsylvania Community Foundation. And our organization uses the mural construction process as a means to build bridges over cultural, social, and economic gaps for kids. So it's a lot of peer-to-peer support and interaction.
Now, are you fluent in many different aspects of being an artisan, or are you just...
Sure. Well, I am primarily a mural artist and a painter. I enjoy a lot of other forms of art. I actually do have a partner that works with me that is a mosaic artist so that we can incorporate a couple of different elements into what we do. But I would say that I am more a master of painting murals and a dabbler in the rest.
So murals is kind of your heartbeat.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, for years, right out of school, I worked as a muralist until I started having children and I needed to sort of settle in, because as a mural artist, you travel a lot, and I had to spend weeks away from my husband, and then I was only home on the weekends. So, when we had children, we had to sort of put a halt to that. But in the process of creating murals in communities, I started to recognize how much the children really responded to that creative process. And when I was doing some mural work in Milton, PA, they had an Art in the Park every Thursday. And I started working with kids at that because their parents were really enjoying the music and the kids had nothing to do. So we wrote a children's book with the kids that taught them all about the history of their community, and they got to illustrate the book. And that sort of started, the brain thinking about how I could really incorporate kids into doing more mural work with me. And so every chance I got, when a kid would pass by a mural I was working on, I would hand them a brush and I'd be like, come paint with me. And I noticed that at first they were really scared, and I explained that there was nothing that they could do that we couldn't incorporate or fix or work into what we were doing. So they really gained confidence in my belief in them. So I just had to figure out a way to sort of make that into something, and that's how Murals Talk came about.
So the first mural was created in 2013 using, I believe it was 6th graders from Juniata Gap. So tell me a little bit about that story and how that came about.
Sure. So Juniata Gap has an annual Day in the Arts program, and Gloria Banks at the time was in charge of organizing that, and she asked me if I would be a part of it. And I said, absolutely, this is a great opportunity for me to sort of try this out, what I really believed in. So we looked at sort of current events and what was going on at the time, and it was right after Hurricane Sandy had hit. And so when we approach a mural, we always like to make sure that we're using a background story to help educate and also provide some perspective to our local kids that are working on the mural, help them realize that there are peers out there that are going through things that they are very fortunate to not have to face and not have to go through. So in doing so and talking about Hurricane Sandy, they realized that there were kids that were missing school, but then they were going to have to go to school in the summer. There were kids that didn't have a home anymore and really no hope of rebuilding what was remaining. And we just talked a lot about that process of going through what would have been something very happy, having it completely wiped away, and how you would respond to that. And knowing that they couldn't physically help them, that they could emotionally support them by sharing this mural with them and partnering with the school district in Long Island to help sort of just build morale and let them know that while we couldn't physically be there to help, we wanted to emotionally support them.
So you guys created a mural at Juniata Gap. It physically got taken to New York, to this small town, and then those kids made one in return, and that is now here in Altoona, correct?
Yes, yeah. So we ended up in Mastic Beach, Long Island at the Tangier Smith Elementary School. And that school was very hard hit. When we went to visit, they actually gave me a little tour of the community, and this was nearly a year later. And there were homes that were still completely boarded up. Several of the kids told me that they were excited because they got a couch. And they hadn't had one in a year, you know, and they were sleeping on the floor, and they were just putting flooring in, and little by little they were rebuilding. But these kids had been without a lot of those sort of basic life needs and some luxuries for a very long time. And so they were just amazed that kids from somewhere in central Pennsylvania thought enough and cared enough about them to encourage them and to give them a gift that, and the mural is a phoenix rising out of the chaos of the hurricane. So they were very touched by that. And we talked a lot about friendship, and we used the symbol of a tree to represent friendship. And while a tree can go through a lot of phases or times where it looks completely dead, for example, without its leaves, the core of the tree is really where it's still alive and well. And we talked about a friendship being like that, where sometimes it goes through challenges, but at the core is where it's really its strength, and that we were building this friendship between these two schools. And so there's a tree in the middle. We always like to incorporate handprints, because we talk about, you know, when somebody falls in the playground, you lend a hand. You always talk about reaching a hand out. So it's just symbolism in the piece that they put their hand onto it. And in the mural that came back, the hands were filling out the treetop, and above the treetop is a storm, and the handprints are sheltering the children in their schools under the storm and this bond and friendship that they have created and built. And there's little kids holding hand in hand out of each of their respective schools and touching the tree. And the one bit that I was really interested in is we talked to the kids about painting, and they get to choose how they fill it in. And each building is just a white building with a black line around it. And we talked about the fact that schools are really just buildings. They're brick and mortar, and the life and the color and the light of a school is in the people that are in it every day, the children, the teachers. So we incorporated a lot of symbolism into it. And then that mural did come back. And maybe the coolest part was we did Skype, which is, it seems like so old now, but we got to Skype with the kids from that class. So the kids that sent the mural up to them got to see these kids, got to interact with them and hear their personal stories, and it just took the meaning of it so much deeper.
And your murals now have gone international. There's been an exchange in Costa Rica and Jamaica, correct?
Yes. Yep.
That's really cool. That is very cool.
Yeah.
And I like the handprint thing.
Yeah.
Just because it's so discreet how you did that. They're there, but you don't. They just fit.
And it's also a confidence builder, because when kids don't feel like they are steady to paint, they're comfortable painting on their hand and slapping it on the painting. So
now, just the international ones, I noticed they kind of go together. So that's obviously pre-planned that they go together.
Sure. So that you mean the two pieces?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's somewhat pre-planned. For example, the Jamaica mural, we talked about the history of Kingston, Jamaica, and how it came to be the capital. And Mo, who is the inspiration behind this piece, he's a soccer coach here locally with the kids, is from Waterhouse. And he told his story about growing up there in poverty in a violent region. and how he sort of broke that cycle of poverty for his family. And so we were able to actually return to the elementary school where he grew up. And then we work with kids there because a lot of them are very hopeless. They don't really feel like there's a lot of hope for them to break that cycle. So for him to go back and be the example of somebody that did break out of that, their jaws like hit the floor when they found out he was from there. And we allow them to draw and create and fill in the gaps of the mural that we did not already produce here. So they both get a creative hand in it, both the local children and the international students.
Where else in Altoona can we find additional murals?
So there's actually a really big one in Public View in Juniata, and it is right on the main street there. And it was created during a festival that was hosted by Arts Altoona. And the challenge was to create a mural in 24 hours. And we were very fortunate to have a lot of good sponsors for that. And over 150 community members actually physically painted on that piece. And it did take us 24 hours, but we got it done.
That's amazing. Yep. That's amazing because it's huge.
It is, it's big.
It's huge. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I always find it intriguing. We all have a gift of some sort or of another, and it's always a matter of what you choose to use it for. And you have definitely used it for something very unique and very meaningful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Today's Platinum sponsor is Harry's Construction, whose motto is, "If you can dream it, we can create it." Recently opening Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center so you, the consumer, can see examples of the variety of services provided by the team at Harry's Construction. Regardless of the project size, Harry's team approaches each project as if it is his own home. Be sure to visit Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center at 114 Main Street in Bellwood. You can also visit their website to see pictures of home improvement projects over the years. Thanks again to Harry Halk and the team for supporting Joy in the City.
Made by Vogel is a father and son business that produces high-quality handmade wooden products such as cutting boards, bowls, bottle stoppers and more. You can't go wrong buying from Made by Vogel.
The mission statement of Because We Care Foundation is to facilitate positive in-person interactions between children and first responders to overcome fears and create a positive relationship. We recently had the opportunity to speak with Jessica DiGennaro about their work.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Jessica. First of all, as we get into this discussion, before we get into much of the foundation, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a mom of two, married to a corrections officer. I am active in my church. We do a food pantry for the community. I teach a Wednesday night class for the kids. And that's pretty much
Fantastic.
About me.
So, what is the foundation, and talk a little bit about why you started it?
The foundation is the Because We Care Foundation. The reason why we started it was to create and foster positive relationships between first responders and children in the community.
Now, I'm told about a story early on about this. Can you talk a little bit about what brought about the desire to do this?
Absolutely. So it was during a time that, kind of like now, how our officers, there was a very negative light towards them. And we were sitting down one night for dinner, and my daughter was scrolling through her phone and had come across a story of a sheriff down in Texas that was brutally murdered while he was pumping gas. And she was really distraught by that. And she said, "Mom, what can we do, to do something nice for our local officers to show them that we truly do appreciate them and what they do?" So we were actually getting ready to go on a Disney trip about a month and a half later. And I had told her, I said, "Hey, you have that money you and your sister have saved up from doing chores. So, for spending money for Disney. So you guys are more than welcome to dip into that and do whatever you would like." So they decided to do Subway platters for all the officers on all 3 shifts. And they ended up taking them down A few days later, the chief of police had called and had one of the girls to come down, for a tour and to thank them for what they did. And as we were there on the tour, the girls got to go in and meet Chief Freeling as well as all the officers. But while we were in that meeting, Chief handed both of my girls a card. And within both of those cards was not only signatures from every officer at the department, but there was also a $100 gift card to Disney to each one. So it was kind of amazing. Like, the girls went into it not expecting anything in return. And these officers in return gave them, the money pretty much back that they had spent towards their trip. So while we were in that conversation with Chief Freeling, she had really, let us know that the relationship between the youth in our community and the officers was broken. So we wanted to figure out how we could help facilitate that brokenness and add some hope and comfort in that. And while we were on our vacation in Disney, my husband and I, we just sat back, and the idea came with the teddy bears. And I'm like, how cool would that be just to give APD maybe personalized teddy bears that they can give to kids, with traumatic situations. And the reason why that came about was because I was a child who went through major trauma, had interactions with the police that weren't the greatest because of me, not because of them. And so I knew with that might help be a tool to, start an early intervention into a child's life, comfort them as well as the officers as well.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I love the concept. The kids took something of their own, gave it away. It's a biblical principle, the sowing and reaping principle.
Absolutely.
Of what came back to them.
Yep.
Very, very cool. So
Yep.
now this is where things had started with the teddy bears, but we know things have evolved into a much broader spectrum. So talk a little bit about what this has, the vision of this, and what it's become today.
Well, it started out with the teddy bears, and initially it was only for the Altoona Police Department. I never dreamt that it would move to 47 partnerships in 6 counties. Wow. And it did. It started with the police, and then the fire departments heard about it. They wanted to be a part of it. EMS, our local dispatch. So it grew. And then within that growing of just the teddy bears, we were able to establish like our first responders emergency fund. As I was telling you earlier, Trooper Landon Weaver, when he passed away, this foundation spearheaded the t-shirts in memory of him. And it was a success. We were able to bless his wife abundantly, more so than I ever imagined. But we were also able to start the Pizza with a Purpose program, our Cocoa with a Popo event. And there's so many, so many.
Yeah.
So.
These are all things, those things make the relationship between the community, kids or adults, and the police just a better, non-threatening environment where they can just kind of come together.
Absolutely.
And meet them. That's very,
Absolutely.
that's very cool. So the teddy bear thing that started this, do you have any idea about how many of these that have been given to kids?
Yeah, over 5,400.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long ago did you start it?
Back October 2015.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you think about it, that's over 5,000 children that have been impacted in a positive way. None of us know. Like, I know I've been told a lot of stories of how the interactions have impacted these children, how it's changed them. So I can only imagine over 5,000 times, like what that's done in the life of these children and the first responders, because the children aren't the only ones that are impacted. Officers are, firefighters are. I've heard it with their own mouths. And it's amazing that it's full circle. It's helping everybody that is a part of it.
Is there a story, you say that, is there a story that have come back to you about this? You've seen the whole cycle type of thing.
Back, I forget what year it was, but we had our event, and he was the former Chief Mercer of Logan Township, was speaking at my event. And he shared the story of his 5-year-old nephew that had passed away. And they were at the funeral, and Logan Township officers came with teddy bears. And they not only put one in the casket of his nephew, but gave one to his niece. And afterwards, Chief Mercer's sister called him and had expressed to him how, you know, her daughter would not put that teddy bear down. And that, seeing Chief Mercer tell this story and just how it impacted him, it just, wow. it was amazing.
Absolutely. Where do you get your supply of teddy bears? How does this come together?
Actually, in the beginning, I was researching different distributors, and of course, being all volunteer, the main factor, of course, is the funds. So a lot of the distributors that I looked at, teddy bears are not cheap. Lo and behold, I found, after much research, a distributor in California where they not only had a different variety of teddy bears and different animals, but they also personalized the t-shirts. So all the cost was in one, and it was a very good price. So I send them the artwork, give them the bear that's been picked out by the department, and they put the bear together and then ship them via UPS to the department.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is tremendously impacting, we can see that.
Yeah.
And being that it's all volunteer, what can people do if they want to contribute or help or volunteer? What's someone that might be watching this show be able to do to help out?
Well, our funds are administered through the Central Pennsylvania Community Foundation. So anytime that they would like to make a donation, being with them assures the donor that 100% of their donation will go directly where it's supposed to go. They can also, we have our banquet event that we're having here in October, and if they're willing to come volunteer for the event or possibly do something at the event to help, we'd welcome it very much.
I love this whole idea. I've seen the photos, I've seen the smiles on faces.
Yeah.
I think that some people don't realize the little expressions, how impactful they can be, especially the children.
Yeah.
I thank you for what you're doing. I encourage you to keep doing this, and we pray blessing on all that you're doing.
Thank you.
And just look forward to seeing the expansion of all these opportunities being more and more in the future. So thank you again for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a look at a slideshow of what this looks like lived out.
In the middle of the storm is where you find them, charging in when everyone is running out. They make that choice, no second guessing, something sure in a world that's full of doubt. And when the walls come down, they'll hold you up. And when you've lost it all, they'll be enough. But a hero's heart is just as fragile. It ain't made of steel, it ain't bulletproof. They face the fight so we don't have to. When all they've got is everything to lose. A hero's heart. It's easy to believe they're more than human. The darker this world gets, the more they shine. But behind those shades of blue, behind the badges, there's a spirit that can break like yours and mine. A hero's heart is just as fragile. It ain't made of steel, it ain't bulletproof. They face the fire so we don't have to. When all they've got is everything to lose. Takes a hero
If you know a person or an organization impacting our city, we want to hear about it. You can contact us at 814-944-1948 or by email at stories@joyinthecity.org. That's all the time we have today. Thank you for watching Joy in the City, True Stories. Let me encourage you to watch other episodes of people and organizations having an impact on our community on ABC 23 at 5:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. every Sunday. You can also catch us each week on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Until then, be encouraged, because God is moving in our city.